welcome back to the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. This is episode 82, and we're still on our documentary run. This week we're on the road, Adam, with
Nice.
a bunch of different wrestlers. We're fulfilling our dates. We're getting ready to debut in WWE with the what would be the future Finn Balor, future Daniel Bryan, former Scotty Goldman, and I don't know if Sal Rinella, I think he's maybe been an enhancement talent in WWE at some point.
Yeah.
So we watched Smack 'Em Up, which was quite a short little documentary following Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor, before he signed with WWE, he went in NXT, and then we watched Wrestling Road Diaries, which followed the other three wrestlers mentioned there. That's a long one, and a long meander of a documentary. Anyway, how you doing? You're right. How's your back?
Yeah, it's it's still there. It's
Still there.
It's functional, but I'll just eventually I'll get an appointment with a specialist, and the letter I got today indicated that I shouldn't be holding my breath for that one. I think it might be a little bit of a while, but yeah. How are you? How was your holiday?
My holiday was good, thanks. It was good. I had a week in the sun in Lanzarote. Yep, it was good. And nice. I'm happy to be back.
Okay. Just, I kind of believe that.
Okay.
Some of it, yeah.
Well, I managed to watch Wrestling Road Diaries on the way home, on the plane home, and I watched Smack 'Em Up during a period in which I wasn't being told to get in the pool with my oldest or go and be like Thor with my youngest. So, yeah. Shall we kick off with Smack 'Em Up?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okie dokie. So Smack 'Em Up follows Prince Devitt, Fergal Devitt, as he's finishing up his indie bookings both in the UK and his contracted dates with New Japan Pro Wrestling before he embarks on his new adventure with WWE. What did you think of it overall, and then we can go into it.
I quite enjoyed it, but it felt like there was just a little brief bit of info about various different things, and like I felt like obviously it's 50 minutes, something like that. It wasn't long, so I felt like that's if that's what they were going for, that's how it had to be. But there were a lot of little moments in it where I was kind of like, I want to see more of that. Oh, we're moving on. Okay.
Aye, I thought that as well. It's almost like it was done for local television about a local lad. Some of it, like someone you would see on like Reporting Scotland or something like that.
Yeah.
But then mixed in with like this like hardcore New Japan wrestling documentary that you would have to basically know who certain people were, and you wouldn't know who Chad was if you didn't know who Chad was, for example.
Yeah.
And then this other backstage UK pro wrestling documentary as well. All that sort of mixed in to the 50 minutes. So it was quite. Yeah, I don't know. I would have liked I think I would have liked a longer version of it, maybe an hour and a half, couple hours. With a bit more information. I didn't learn much about Finn Balor, the man that I probably didn't know. He comes across as a sort of quiet, humble guy that loves his wrestling. He says it himself that he'd be doing it if there was 10 people in the crowd or 1,000 or 10,000, which I think is endearing to people like us who love watching it. So, for that point of view, I didn't learn much. But if we go through what it was structured like, we sort of start off with a bit of introduction, that sort of local news type thing. I'm a local lad from, is it Bray, Ireland?
Bray. Yeah.
It goes into a bit of stuff about the promotion ICW in Glasgow. He's got a date to fulfill there. I don't think it's like knocking you over the head that he's fulfilling these. Like, he doesn't ever say like, I've got these independent dates and I need to work them, and once I've worked them, I'm going ready to go. It was never like knocked you over the head with it, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. I've never really followed that much about him. Like, I knew he'd been to Japan. I knew he was Irish, but beyond that, I didn't really know he would have been doing shows in Glasgow. It makes sense when, you know, you think about where he's from and all that. I think I had a first laugh moment when he's speaking to another wrestler outside the arena, and he's talking about losing a bollock.
Aye.
Yeah.
It's like, you're winding me up, you know? And the guy's like, nah, just had it removed the other day there.
It's just sort of said in a really matter-of-fact way. Like, oh, when these guys go to work, it's a different situation than when I do.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. It does a little bit of a puff piece for ICW. I think here you've got the owner, promoter, Mark Dallas, speaking about it. He's like giving it the hard sell about how lots of other independent companies, they'll just put on matches, we put on stories and all this sort of thing. It's very, that's very McMahon rehearsed, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
I liked seeing, it was pretty cool seeing, like, obviously a lot of people have come through ICW, a lot of household names have come through ICW, and that sort of ties into what we watched with the Wrestling Road Diaries as well, so it's quite cool, the comparison between the two. We saw, off the top of my head, I remember seeing Grado, seeing Aleister Black, Malachi Black, Tommy End. Apart from that, I can't really remember off the top of my head others that we saw. I really liked seeing that Jack Jester was doing his paint for him, just like randomly in the back, and he's doing like full body paint.
Oh yeah.
That was so funny to me. I don't know. I've seen videos of Jeff Hardy doing his own paint before in the mirror and all that, but I don't know. You just didn't expect like the guy that he's wrestling to be doing his paint for him
before we go out there. Let's let me paint you up.
Aye, so funny.
There's I think it's quite early on. There's a moment he's talking. I don't know exactly who he's with, but he's talking with somebody about the injuries he's had through his career, and you know, he's probably not until he got to WWE. I didn't know much about his career. I'd heard some of the stuff that will be covered as we go, but like, I never thought of him as that guy's had a lot of injuries. There was the one he got when he, I think, first became Undisputed Champion, but apart from that, you never really think of it. But then he's listing them, and you're like, oh, it seems like he's broken every bone, he's had concussions, he's basically had everything, and you're like, all right, okay.
Yeah, so brazenly just talking about concussions as well, we go back to what we watched with, what's his name again? What's his name? The last documentary we watched, not the David Arquette one, the Vampiro.
Oh, Vampiro.
You know, and he's just saying, 23, 24 concussions. And I think Balor's talking about 4 concussions or something like that, but even still, he's pretty young there.
It hits you when he says it, and you know, like it's concussions, and you know, nowadays you sort of wince when you hear the word.
And I think we can get into that later on. Actually, I think that probably covers the first sort of period piece of it. The whole Glasgow date, it jumps into New Japan, and for me, this is where it started getting interesting. Particularly, it takes you into, again, it doesn't really put him over as like he's a groundbreaking. You know, he started the Bullet Club and all that sort of stuff, and it didn't really tell you about that.
It's actually really underplayed. There's a few things I was thinking, all right, okay, they touch on it, but how did you get to Japan? How did you become a star in Japan? All that kind of thing. And then the Bullet Club's one of those things that I would probably love to watch a documentary about all things Bullet Club, because I'm aware Finn Balor led it. I'm aware of a few of the people that were in it. I'm aware, AJ Styles came in when Finn Balor was away. But it's just one of those things that it was obviously massively over with the crowd, but because it wasn't a WWE thing, it wasn't an AEW thing, but they sort of, a lot of the people that were involved moved into those companies. But it's just one of those things. I'd love to watch a documentary just breaking down everything Bullet Club.
Some more information. So you're right about underplaying it, and maybe there is a documentary out there which would be good to watch. I agree, but this wasn't it.
Yeah.
But the thing I found really fascinating, 2 things actually. One, I just expect that wrestlers that worked in Japan, especially like Balor worked in Japan for a bit, and you've got Gallows and Anderson there as well. I expected they would speak Japanese.
Yeah, and it very much seemed like they didn't have to, and they knew they didn't have to. But yeah, I was quite interested as we're going into sort of the lifestyle of a wrestler in Japan, in particular, foreign wrestlers being in Japan. I found that quite interesting. But again, you only get a bit. You see a bit. But it was like one of the things that was coming across, how without them explaining the path, you do get the impression this guy's worked hard. He's worked hard to get where he is. He's put everything into it. He's talking about the euphoria of going out there performing being like a drug. And I think he says a free drug. And it's like, you hear about sort of people that are at the opposite end of their career from where he is at this point in time, where they can't walk away from it.
Yep.
And it always makes, how would you replace that in your life? Like that thing of going out and getting that reaction.
Yeah, 100%. Takes me back to that image of Jada Snake when he was broken down and he was drunk and all that in the ring, shouting at people.
Yeah.
Going back there, like just to that start bit of him breaking it in Japan, that the stuff about the apprenticeship and how he would cook for the other wrestlers and clean their gear and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's like, I know that you hear things about American wrestling where people weren't allowed in a locker room at the start or something like that. Just whatever it may be. But this seemed to be, I don't know, taking things to another level from the, you're supposed to wake up and shake the hand of all the experienced people in the locker room. This seemed to be going, a step further than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically said it's like an apprenticeship at home where you're like the dog's body sort of thing to start off when you work your way up. I proper loved all that stuff. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's like a youth team footballer being told he has to clean the boots of the senior pros. Yeah.
We start getting Gallows and Anderson coming in to this as sort of main characters of the documentary. I think I would say if you didn't know who they were, you'd be like, who are these two characters? Total cheeky chappies. I think as it goes along, you're like, all right, so these guys are here for a total free ride.
Oh,
they're just getting everything bought for them.
Yeah, there's it gets into moments where I think they're being taken out for meals and drinks after the matches and running up big bills and they're not spending a penny and all that. And I was thinking, I remember when I would go online and read about such and such has been made an offer but not sure if they want to leave Japan. I was thinking, Gallows and Anderson, I totally get why they wouldn't have wanted to leave Japan.
They just they must just bounce about and get the best deals they possibly can. They're still signed to WWE. I think they're barely on the TV.
Yeah,
they must be loving life. They show us some funny footage of like Balor and a couple other wrestlers giving chops to punters that fans, and then it's like the boss's assistant or something like that, like for the boss's amusement, kind of court jester type stuff going on.
My mind immediately went to, I bet Vince McMahon would love doing stuff like this. You work for me. Hopefully it's only a chop he's telling them to take.
Oh, dear.
My bad.
Takes you back to the what was it? He's supposed to take in the heart attack or the doomsday device or something in a strip club. Oh dear.
I noticed a few of the fans seemed really up for taking their first chop, and then they seemed to be trying to score them away before the second one's.
Carl Anderson wasn't letting them go. So all that stuff's pretty entertaining, and again, like I think it just puts Balor over or Devitt or whatever, puts him over as a sort of laid back character that just seems to be like really enjoying his life, which is
It's funny because another thing they don't get a hell of a lot into in this is you've got Gallows and Anderson, you've got Balor, and them coming together as a group. They talk a little bit about storyline of Balor, Devitt at the time turning on his long-term partner in Japan and then forming this group. But you don't get to see or hear that much about why these guys. Is it just the fact they're all foreign, they're all working in Japan, and then you see the sort of the formation, and then I think a little bit of an expansion of the group, and the indication is they were totally running roughshod over New Japan, but you don't see an awful lot. You just see little bits and pieces.
Aye, that was something that Carl Anderson said, or Chad. He says, like, we can do what we want out of the ring and drink what we want and eat what we want. The boss will pay for it. And he's like, in the ring, we can do what we want as well. And it's just like, what is this? There's a great scene of, and just to like the comparison with working for ICW, you see him getting ready for his final match in Japan, and he's there hours and hours before, and he's getting like all painted up by like some sort of I don't know what you would, some sort of artist or something like that, with like this really intricate body paint, which was quite a cool way of showing you the difference between what he's doing in Japan, and that was kind of it. It just sort of it got you to his final date, and that was kind of it for Japan. Would I like to have seen the pass on of the Bullet Club? I think AJ Styles attacks him and takes it over, sort of thing. I'm like you. I would like to have seen more about that, but
and they do kind of touch on he seems to have it's kind of like, I don't think he's conflicted in that he's thinking I shouldn't go to WWE. I think he's thinking I have to go to WWE, but he definitely seems, he keeps talking about how it could be his last match in Japan, but hopefully not his last match in Japan and things like that.
I think I'll be back here at some point. It's funny that you definitely get the impression in it. I think we'll speak about this with Danielson as well, and the other one, that if it all goes tits up, and I get the impression they've seen so many people that have been in this position and go and come back, that they'll be fine. Yeah, they'll be totally fine, and they'll be happy to come back to Japan and Scotland and Newcastle and whatever. So. And I've got that about. So his very last, the last sort of portion of the documentary sees him back with ICW. They're at a booking in Newcastle. He's fulfilling his final date with them. And I've got that in my notes here, that you get the impression he almost expects to be back working in this sort of environment. Yeah. And then you see him now. And I actually remember thinking, like, he doesn't really do very much anymore. Not that I watch it all the time or anything like that. But he just doesn't seem to do very much anymore. He's not on a lot of pay-per-views and that. But when you get to that stage of your career, with exactly like what you're saying with the injuries and the amount of years you've been doing it, like, that just must be the dream ticket. Yeah, you're employed, you've got your I'm sure, very good paycheck coming in, and if you're not asked to be wrestling on every show, you're probably all right with that. I'm sure, when it comes to the big shows, you probably want to be on it and you probably want to be doing something meaningful. But I'd watched Money in the Bank after I watched this, right? So I was like, when he pops up, and he's basically just got a backstage segment, and the Judgment Day, my memory was he was the lead of the Judgment Day, and now I'm watching, he's like, no, he's relegated to second, if not third, in there, and he's just sort of doing the little, almost like to Damian Priest and things like that. And obviously something's coming with that story, but he probably is happy to just be, having a good few nights off and resting up. And, that pretty much sums it up for me. The ICW stuff wasn't really much different to the stuff at the start. You see a bit of crazy action and all that sort of stuff, but for what it was, I enjoyed it. I didn't learn massively anything new or anything like that, but that I don't think that was the purpose of it. It was just like a sort of focus on him, and it was good to get that sort of independent, which we've seen with a lot of these. With what it's not like, this guy is amazing sort of thing. It's like it's just it was good. It was worth the watch, I think. Yeah, I think so. I quite liked. Just there wasn't so much about him, it was more about the shows, the ICW shows, because his last indie booking was in Newcastle, and you can see, and it's being mentioned, that a lot of the crowd that are there for it were in Glasgow.
for the show. So it's like this is our show, this is our company. Wherever it goes, there's clearly this group of fans that are following it about and going to all the shows, which I thought was pretty cool. Like a fan base to have this attachment to this company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this would have been around about 2014-ish.
Right.
That this was, and I think there's a pretty big boom around about that time.
Yeah.
Certainly for ICW, and then Triple H came along and like grabbed every British wrestling company he could, and
I remember that,
did what his father-in-law did like 30 years earlier.
It was all about there was going to be a relaunch of World of Sport and wrestling on ITV, and they decided they weren't having that.
Mentally,
just tried to take. Cause I think even they offered JR something to not go and do that as well.
Yeah, JR did do that, eh?
Yeah. So it's a shame, but I suppose I get it.
Have you ever watched any of that?
No.
ITV World of Sport. It's almost like watching wrestling, but in like the catchphrase studio. It's
right.
We talked about WWE being polished, and it's like polished but tacky.
Okay,
it's not a good mix. Poor JR. It just doesn't seem like he fitted in that. I've only watched maybe a couple of episodes or something like that, but it's just not great.
I think Jeff Jarrett was initially going to be involved, and then when all the talent started being signed by WWE, he was like, I think I'll just leave it.
That's funny. Cool. So that's Smack 'em Up. I've put it in the show notes, so anybody that's listening that fancies it can click it. It's just on YouTube, so feel free to give it a whirl.
Nice. Okay. So we're moving across to Wrestling Road Diaries.
Indeed.
So I'll just read a little spiel. 3 independent wrestlers: Colt Cabana, Sal. You pronounced it earlier.
Rinella?
Yeah, that'll do. And Bryan Danielson document their trials and tribulations while traveling across America. So there's a little bit more to it than what's just in that little spiel. In that Daniel Bryan is basically going to be working his notice period, I suppose you would say. He's going to be finishing off his independent bookings. I believe, of all the things we can accuse and be angry with Vince McMahon for, I do believe when he signed people, he was always pretty adamant about them working their bookings. So yeah, we're gonna basically, it's like your buddy staying silent with a camcorder following his 3 pals around through cars, wrestling shows, craziness going on by the side of roads and things like that. But it's not like outlandish and like this probably would have been with 3 famous wrestlers in like the 70s or 80s, where it's all drink and drugs and things like that. These don't seem to be this kind of group. They seem to be about, having a laugh, but, wrestling. I think I messaged you because I'd watched it while you were on holiday, saying something like, it's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. It goes on a really long time, and I'm not sure it really needed to go on as long as it did for the story it's telling you. There's an awful lot in here that could be taken out, but this is incredibly unpolished. It's rough, and it's just basically trying to take you on this little journey with these guys.
Yeah, and that's all part of its charm, I think, and it kind of makes you feel like you're along for the ride, I think, a little bit, where where it's not polished and it's not, there's no story arc here. It's literally what it says it is. You're just following them. And that is one of my favourite things about it, actually, was that, for example, they went to a certain place. They were going to go here, but the date got changed. So instead we're going back to Philadelphia, I think it was. And there was no like a Top Gear type thing where they say, like, we're going to start here and we're going to finish here and this is how we're going down the map and all that. It was nothing like that. It was just, like I said earlier, meander across America to various different parts. I thought it was like a independent wrestling's version of Entourage a little bit. When you used to watch Entourage and you would watch it for the cameos almost.
Oh, but yes. I did find at certain points when I was watching this, I was a little bit like, oh, who are we going to see when we went from one show to another and things like that. I think I generally enjoyed it. It did drag at times because it's incredibly long, and for periods of time there really isn't very much happening. But yeah, what did you think? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I'm thinking back on it with fondness. I watched it in maybe 2 or 3 parts though.
Okay.
And it's funny because I was going to say I could probably watch about 10 episodes of this or something. But it is interesting if you're saying you watched it in a oneer and it just felt too long, because I'm sure it probably got quite repetitive.
Yeah.
It's like wrestling date, what are we doing today? Wrestling date, whose house are we staying at? What are we doing today?
Yeah.
Wrestling date. It does go a bit like that. Just love the backstage interactions and all that sort of stuff. I find it fascinating.
Yeah. I think I quite like anything as well that kind of maybe opens my eyes up to what life's like for independent wrestlers now, or when was this? 15 years ago, actually, I think this was, but fairly recent times. Because the ones you hear about when you hear the stories are usually such and such really struggled before they made it, and then all was good. Whereas this is a mix of guys that are potentially about to make it, and maybe this is as good as it's getting for some. So yeah.
It's interesting that the three of them are travelling together the way that they're travelling. They seem to be joined pretty much. I don't know if it's just the way that it's presented, but like you get the impression where one goes, 3 of them are going.
Yeah.
One's seeing out his dates and he's signed with, or he's getting ready to sign with WWE. One's just come back from WWE, and the other's just like an enhancement talent. And the fact that they're all sort of different made it quite interesting for that point of view.
I like the fact there was an enhancement talent with them, because there's a few moments where where Sal's speaking and you're like, oh, that's kind of how he sees this, because that's he's talking about his job being making other people look good, and he has no belief that he should be the main guy anywhere. He just thinks this is his role, this is his job.
This is his job, aye.
Yeah. So we're kicking off. I think it's 2009 with Colt Cabana returning to Ring of Honor from WWE, and we've got some talking heads praising Bryan Danielson and Colt Cabana, two of the people we're going to be following. And I've not actually made any note of any of the talking heads there, but I definitely have some later on. Danielson has an offer from WWE, so he's working his last dates on the Indies, and we're going to be following. I think it's 10 days. I think they said 10
Is
days.
It really? Wow.
Yeah. 10-day story of life on the road. And immediately we're into like backstage, and there's like some terrible jokes on the go, absolutely shocking ones, like dad gags. But yeah, and then one of the first things that caught my eye. So we've got Sal saying the thing I was talking about before. He knows he's not a top guy. He's there to make the other guys look good. He seems happy with his job. And then I see Jim Cornette out of absolutely nowhere. Like you were saying, sometimes it is, spot a wrestler or a wrestling industry person, and there's quite a few moments like that. But for some reason, I didn't expect to see Jim Cornette, and he's in here at least a couple of times, maybe 3.
He ran Ring of Honor for a period there.
Yeah. We've got Colt Cabana. Like, I quite quickly went into it. I'm either going to love this guy or hate this guy, and I wasn't quite sure which way I was going to go on it.
Colt Cabana's like a guy that you go on a night out with and you're like, oh, how class was that guy? But then you spend a week with him and you're like, fuck me, this guy's so annoying.
We've all met people at stages like that. Yeah, like, it's... When I first heard him speaking, he's talking about, he's happy to have left WWE. He's going to get to keep saying like he's my creativity, my skill set, all that. And obviously you were hindered in terms of what you could be in WWE and what they wanted you to be in WWE. But I quite quickly, and I think we exchanged messages about this, I quite quickly thought, him and CM Punk, they were friends?
Like besties? How?
I fully understand now how they're not. But yeah, they seem such polar opposites. He seems so enthusiastic and jokey, and everything's like off the cuff and like ball slaps at people and things like that. It's all that kind of stuff. Whereas CM Punk, you always thought, this is a guy that takes all of this very seriously. So it's a funny clash there.
Even Danielson, I don't know what your impression of Danielson is or was before watching this, but I suppose I probably saw him as like quite an intelligent guy who's quite intense, and is like very serious about his wrestling and stuff like that. I didn't see him and Cabana's personalities, but it seemed like the way that Danielson was talking about it was kind of like he needed. I need that.
Yeah, I think the thing I came away from that dynamic thinking was, I think Bryan Danielson, is a guy who takes his wrestling seriously, and that comes across, a lot through this. I think he maybe doesn't want to take life too seriously.
But not life. I totally agree. Yeah, I loved his perspective on there's various bumps in the road as far as getting to WWE were concerned with his medical clearances and stuff like that. I loved his perspective on like, if it doesn't happen, then I'll just keep on keeping on, sort of thing. This is my life.
Actually, I'd watched them the other way. So I watched this and then the Finn Balor one, and I came away from it thinking what the similarity I saw in Danielson and Devitt was, if this doesn't work out, they'll be okay. Because what they care about is doing their thing, and they obviously want to do it on the biggest stage. But if they can't, they'll just go back and keep doing their thing. We've got there's a few moments in here, and I don't think I wrote any of them down, but it was clear to me that there were some phrases and jokes used that would not have been cleared for a documentary with Bryan Danielson now. If this was
we're definitely in 2009 here.
Yeah. There's a few. There's Cornette, there's Cabana, there's Danielson. They've all said something at some point through this.
Yeah, it's all said jokily.
Yes,
but,
yes. It made me quite happy that this was, an independent thing, and they could just kind of be them.
Cornette would say that these things now,
no doubt. Yeah, absolutely no doubt. It's the first Danielson match that I've got written. Is it Roderick Strong he's in with?
Yeah.
I think. And he takes, I think Danielson's taken the defeat. I think he's putting guys over a few times on his way out. Is it on his way out?
Made Roderick Strong look amazing, didn't it? Just like this documentary made him look amazing.
Yes, yeah. And you get moments where obviously there's an appreciation and a respect from the other performers that are there. I think there's actually more than one incident of like them clearing out the locker room and coming out to congratulate him, even though it's his last night probably in that city. It's not his last night yet in the company. But it came across he's really self-critical. Like, 'cause everyone else seems to be talking about how well the match went, he's talking about a couple of spots that he didn't get quite right, and I think they were shorter on time than they wanted to be. And it's a sort of frustration, I think, with not having had the perfect match.
That's very similar to what we used to hear about Benoit, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd heard a lot about, over the years, almost every book you read, wrestlers sharing hotel rooms. You see plenty of that in this, and it's not only hotel rooms, it's, friends with a room or anyone, family, whoever it may be. And I think this was the moment where I realised, never mind the back injury. I'm not going to make it in wrestling. And
well, why is that? Because you need to sleep in your own bed?
I just can't. I can't. See, when there's like other people in the room, like, if you go away for a night away, and we've done it at various houses, you have a boozy night and then you're sleeping almost wherever you fall. Like, if I have anyone that isn't supposed to be in my house when I'm trying to sleep, I'm not going to sleep. I just can't. And I need complete silence to sleep. This is all on me rather than on whoever else may be there. But yeah, it's just not something I could do now.
I found all that stuff really interesting. Like, they didn't know where they were going to be sleeping, and if they didn't have anywhere to stay, they were just planning on driving down the road. And like, I think when we've both consumed plenty stuff about the 80s and 90s, of wrestling, and you kind of think that was the way. Certainly, like 80s, early 90s, you think they perform, jump the car, find somewhere when they get down. But 2009, I don't know. I don't know what I expected.
Yeah, same. I think the thing is, because it's all been like these older performers, I think we've heard this stuff about, so you just assume that doesn't happen now. Well, I assume it still happens now based on what we watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You expect them to have like an itinerary or something like that, but they just seem to be like, that's why I keep using the word meandering, they just seem to be like going with it.
Yeah.
However things happen, they happen. Kind of made me quite uncomfortable, actually.
I couldn't, like, I work Monday to Friday, basically, 7.5 hours a day. That's me, and I know where I'm at with that. But there's a moment they come out and they're getting in the car, and there seems to be a slight disagreement about whether they're heading to Massachusetts or Connecticut. And I'm like, but you surely need to know where you're going.
I know. And the sat-nav seemed to be like a relatively new thing. Cabana was saying, like, I would have been away off on the wrong track and all that previously.
Yeah. We get they're going to go to a sort of, it's like a training center type thing for I assume it's affiliated with Ring of Honor. I don't think it says that specifically, but given those guys are going there, I'm assuming it is. And it's basically for them, I think, to help upskill, pass on some advice and knowledge and things like that to a bunch of trainees. There's a bit of frustration by Danielson when he's sort of talking about this whole kind of thing about, people come up to you and they'll ask you all these questions, but they never take anything on board that you actually say.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And that isn't like a big-headed thing. He's frustrated because he really wants them to learn what it is that he's telling them.
Yeah.
And they'll maybe, they'll take 1% of what you tell them, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's. I think they reference he was trained at a Shawn Michaels school. It was Shawn Michaels actually trained him, I believe. And I suppose he would have been trying to soak up every single bit of information he could have possibly got, and then he'll get frustrated when people aren't doing that.
Yeah, that's what I think Cabana said that. He's like, I trained with like 2 random guys in Chicago, but whereas Bryan had this like intense, amazing training with Shawn Michaels.
We get an appearance by Claudio Castagnoli.
We do.
I love that guy. Still love that guy.
What a guy. He just seems so happy in this, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I remember it coming across in WWE, but it must have been a thing beforehand because it seems like Danielson loves him. Absolutely loves him. He's, I think, quite new or relatively new on the circuit at this point, certainly in the US, but it seems like he's working hard and trying to improve himself, which is nice to see. I've always been a big fan. Is he still in AEW?
I think so. Yeah, what, the Blackpool Combat Club?
Oh, yes. You do see what I thought was nice, even if they're maybe not listening to all the advice, that there clearly is I think a respect from local independent guys for Danielson and Colt Cabana. That comes across pretty strong. And Colt Cabana, I thought, told quite a good story here about sort of relating that situation back to when he walked into WWE, and he's, the new guy, and he's the levels below the guys he's walking in and encountering, and he obviously sounded like had all the respect for them, so it's quite nice to see that all through the levels.
Yeah, it was good. I think he did this separately as well. He talked about his third match. Did he say his third match was King Kong Bundy?
I think so, yeah.
And he was saying like King Kong Bundy never remember wrestling whoever, Colt Cabana, in his third match, but I'll remember that for the rest of my life. So when you're wrestling guys that, the other way, people really that look up to you, it's like a big deal for them. So you need to put in the effort as much as you would anybody else, which I really liked, actually.
Yeah, I thought that was good awareness of, his role in these other people's lives, and not to, be phoning it in or whatever. Yeah. Danielson's talking about he doesn't really want people looking up to him. He just wants to be their friend. He says, I just want pals. He's a funny wee guy.
Definitely is.
He's I think this caught me off guard because I maybe just made an assumption, which you should never do. But we go to him and he's in a local area and there's a local champion and all that. And Danielson's going to do a little program with this guy. And Danielson's a heel because he slaps the local champion and things like that. And maybe sort of a little bit of a flashback to like territory era. Yeah, which I liked.
And that was, I found that class as well. And the people there were cheering for their guy because obviously he'll be the guy that they see all the time. And this big shot's coming in that's going to WWF. I love that too. That was brilliant.
Yeah. I think we both harked back for territory days at times. It just felt like a tiny little snippet of what that kind of thing might be like. He's, I'm sure at this point we see Tommaso Ciampa.
Would you?
And he looked almost unrecognisable to me from what he is now.
Does he have long hair?
I think so, yeah.
Zero beard and long hair?
Yeah, no beard. No beard.
He looked really young.
Yeah, when they said the name, I looked, I thought, no, it's not. Already have an argument with the TV. He's wrestling Cabana. But weirdly, for me, because, I've seen a few Ciampa matches, it's a comedy match. And I get that falls into the wheelhouse of Colt Cabana for a lot of what he does, but Tommaso Ciampa, that just wouldn't have occurred to me. I'm used to him just absolutely destroying folk.
But then, I know, I get it. But then it's completely different circumstances, and it's in its own little isolated bubble of that show. But that's quite an interesting point.
It's sort of because we don't have the same. So I know you go to quite a few local shows when you can. Talking about that those areas having their champion and their regular performers and things like that. I think just in my mind it was all more of but that's the famous guy. So that's the guy they're all here to see. Yeah, I like that. We get. I think this is where we see a clip of Danielson. He's getting ready to go out for his match, and the show that he's doing the match on has been over 3 hours long. So he had one type of match in his mind when he was going out, but he's like, no, the crowd are basically dead on their feet here, so I have to go out and make it a higher tempo, fast start match than what was intended. And I think just good awareness of what a crowd needs in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that awareness must be so valuable to have had that experience when, I'm thinking of his match, was it WrestleMania 35? He fought Kofi Kingston, and you're like 5 hours into the pay-per-view, and the crowd were dead. I can remember it well. And to have that experience, knowing that, the awareness to know that, and then being able to manipulate them, get them back into the match, which is what he did with that match, must be invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. But funny little moment at the show where he's stomping the guy on the floor and like throwing him into chairs and stuff like that. And it's the other wrestler's dad that's trying to help him up and stuff like that. And you're like, yeah, that must be something a bit different about these wee shows. You're going to there'll be a whole chunk of the fans in there that actually know the guy that you're trying to beat up.
Aye, that's funny that.
Where are we? Oh, they have the match. Go out and get some food together, and then I think New Hampshire is where. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is that where things get weird with the girl? No, is that after? Is that later?
I think that's a wee bit later.
Is it? Okay.
There's talk of I would never have heard about this or understood or known about it, but they're talking about Ring of Honor having to work their shows around filming for the film The Wrestler.
Yeah.
So is it like same venue, and are they like using the same ring and some
crowd? The final scene where he dives off the top rope.
Yeah.
And then it fades. It goes to black. That was filmed at that Ring of Honor show that they're at.
Okay.
I think is it in New York?
Where have I got New Hampshire?
New Hampshire
written down.
Yeah.
And that's just quite weird. You sort of it's usually WWE doing their own thing of filming that we see. It's funny to think there's this film being made, and a very good film. Danielson's going to start talking, I think for the first time here, about some of the medical issues that he's going to have to try and navigate for sort of finalising his WWE deal. He had to get a heart MRI, and there's also stuff about, I think, his blood work, the enzymes in the blood.
Issues with his liver or something like that?
Yeah. I kind of, very naively never think, well, of course they're gonna do all the tests and look into everything before they let you go and perform on one of their shows.
I found his take on these things so refreshing and so insightful. Where he's just like, there's zero panic in anything. Like, first of all, this is the WWF and it's like probably life-changing money.
Yeah.
And he's just like, if there's something wrong, then at least I've caught it now. And if it means I don't get to go to WWE, then that's okay because I enjoy this life. But it was more if it's a cancer or something like that, then better find it now than it is 10 years down the line. And it's just like, wow. How do I apply to be this laid back?
I think I was unsettled. No, I think I get the, health comes before the high paid job thing. I do get that. But he even seemed relaxed about the health things. And I was thinking, if when I go and see the doctor, which has been a lot with this stupid back, anytime they kind of go, or anything that looks in any, I'm like, well,
total spike of anxiety.
Yeah. This is it. They'll never walk again. This is what you're telling me. My back will never fix. Yeah, I'm waiting for that. But he was so laid back. They get some time, unexpected free time, which hit me when it was said, because obviously these guys, they have a schedule. They're supposed to be in certain places at certain times. But I think using the phrase like unexpected free time made me think, oh, these guys finish a show, then they go to the next show. So
they're just on a conveyor belt, aren't they?
Yeah. So for them to actually have a break, we work hard-ish in our jobs, and then basically for me, with very little responsibility, the rest of my day is the rest of my day. For as soon as I finish, and my weekends are my weekends. But these guys, it's almost like they don't know what to do with themselves because they've got free time, and it's such an unusual thing. We get a nice bit about why they've basically chosen to travel with each other. Basically, a group of guys that seems like they get on well, personalities mesh, and also I think there was the indication that maybe, if you pick the wrong partner for your road trip, you might end up caught up in quite a bit of drama that you really don't want to have to deal with. And the indication was these guys are very unlikely to end up in that kind of situation.
I think did they say? I don't think any of them drink. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was said. Yeah. So yeah, they're obviously quite a good dynamic. I think no drink, no drugs is what was said. Which again, I knew about Danielson. I probably wouldn't have guessed about Colt Cabana, but it just seems like he's always on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Danielson talking about some of the stuff he struggled with a bit when he was young. Struggled to have the confidence to get up and speak in front of a class, and now he goes out and wrestles. I think he says wrestles in front of people in his underwear.
At some point, he only had half his underwear on.
Yes. There's a moment where I try to think if this is like in a restaurant or something like that. No, it's when they're in the car. They're in the car, and I think there's maybe a working couple of women at the side of the road, and Cabana just wants to shout things, and these guys, and Danielson's very much of the no, shut up, just behave yourself, just drive, just stop making an exhibition of yourself. I don't know why this caught me off guard. When was this? 2009?
Yep.
Bryan Danielson is shopping for records, like in record shops.
Amazing.
And the thing I didn't really get, but he was good for it. He selects his clothing in shops based on feel rather than what any of them look like.
Oh, I missed that.
He's like showing these. He's got these T-shirts. I think it's like 3 T-shirts. He has no idea what's on the front of them because he hasn't looked. He's just felt the material and thought, "Yep, I'll take that." And there's one that is about drinking lots of beer or something. It's like, oh well.
Oh, I must have missed that wee bit. That's funny. Maybe that's where his Champion of the Earth heel character came from.
Yeah. They go visit Danielson's sister. We get some like anecdotes about him.
I wanted to know what Danielson's sister and or her husband did, because they have the biggest house and estate that I've ever seen in my life.
It's an incredibly nice house, yeah. They
got like a full-on gym, and
because I think when it was first mentioned, I thought, she's just putting up 3 wrestlers. And yeah, absolutely no problem in that house.
A Christmas tree farm.
Yeah. He gets his MRI, cardiac MRI results. They're all good, but there's still some things to look at with the blood work. He's hoping it's not too serious. Might be a gallbladder problem or something like that. But I think, quite rightly, the heart was probably one of the big concerns. And then he's just hoping he's not got anything like a cancer based on the blood work. But there's a side of the road watermelon eating contest. Why?
For entertainment, I assume. For their own entertainment. It seems like they need to do things like this to keep themselves going, I think.
So Sal and Colt Cabana are going to have a contest eating watermelon, and the loser will have to say something about
I suck it.
I suck it.
Yeah.
I suck at eating watermelon, and I suck it.
At the next independent show they're going to.
Yeah. We get some. There's I think a couple of Colt Cabana jokes that are going over the crowd's head. I don't think that, it's when he's doing a signing and he's talking about how my first match was I beat Hulk Hogan and stuff like that, and there's some of them responding really seriously, and I was thinking that one's just doing it for his kid because his kid's there and he's just playing it along. But then I saw another couple of guys and I thought, I don't see any kids there. Just
main evented WrestleMania 3, this is
Danielson, this is where we get Danielson doing one of his comedy matches where his trunks are basically all the way down for what seemed like
quite an
the entire match.
Very uncomfortable, particularly when he bent over to pick the guy up.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't keen on that.
There's a running joke about Danielson keeping his eyes open when he sneezes, and then a couple of times when it happened, it did not look to me like he was keeping his eyes open when he sneezed. So, where we got?
So was that the show where he wrestled Johnny Gargano? No,
it may have been.
I've
not written down an opponent there.
I think it was in Cleveland or Ohio. One of obviously that's sitting in the state. But it was funny that one of them wrestled Ciampa and one of them wrestled Gargano. Both like young versions of them.
There's a lot of stuff in here that it was different context and different moments, but it reminded me of dicking around with my pals when I was a teenager. There's a moment they're trying to take that. I think they're staying in a house that's got a cat, and a couple of them are allergic to cats, and they're taking these pills to try and help them sleep and fend off the allergy effect. And Daniel Bryan's really adamant that he's taking his pill without having any water, and then he takes his pill, and then he drinks loads of water a bit after that, but saying he's still manly because he took the pill without the water. And it was basically like thinking, I knew guys like this.
I see, 100%.
We've got a Ring of Honor show, and he's facing Chris Hero.
Yes.
And he's not been feeling great, Danielson, but I think they go 30 minutes.
He's good. I think he's got this. Cabana says he's got the flu.
Yeah. 30 minutes, and he puts Hero over. I felt like I knew the name Chris Hero, but I wasn't sure.
Cassius Ohno in NXT.
Ah, right, okay.
He wrestled as Chris Hero. Do you remember? Right. I'm sure we've talked about it before. Him Punk now have like 3 1-hour matches. A match in a warehouse where they like wreck the walls and all that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. We are heading off to Chicago, which is Colt Cabana's hometown.
Mm-hmm.
It's the third best wrestler from Chicago.
Is that your? Is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm going. I'll go Sky Blue, CM Punk, and then Colt Cabana.
Brilliant.
I can't think of any others. Danielson, they showed this a few times. When they get to a building, he seems to just lay down in like benches and stuff like that at what look like quite uncomfortable angles and just falls asleep.
It was amazing. Sort of fitting with his personality that's coming across.
It does. We've got Bret Hart here. He's obviously touring around with Ring of Honor, doing autograph signings and things like that. They show a moment where he meets, it might have been at the next bit actually, where he meets Colt Cabana and there's a handshake and, some pleasantries and all that. You cannot tell me Bret Hart likes Colt Cabana. I'm not buying it.
Bret definitely hates Colt Cabana. He'll love Danielson, hate Cabana.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Yes, I probably never thought about this kind of thing happening, but he gets to go in the ring. Bret gets nice reactions from the crowd and all that. A lot of respect for Bret Hart. I suppose a Ring of Honor audience is bound to love a Bret Hart.
That's just absolutely. I like that. I liked seeing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We get Colt Cabana is going to be wrestling Claudio Castagnoli, and. I've got more things about Colt Cabana just hitting people in the nuts.
He does a funny little spot where he'll go like, "Oh, look," and the referee looks away and he puts the guy in the balls.
Yeah,
we see that multiple times. It must be one of his things.
Yeah, I think it's Austin Aries that Danielson.
We see Austin Aries a few times, don't we? A couple of times.
Yeah.
I think he got a run as Ring of Honor champion for quite a long period of time, didn't he?
That's right. Yeah. Is this? Yeah. Is it Danielson that takes a 450 splash and it hits him in the nuts?
That's great.
He's very. There's a moment here, and I can't remember how we get to it, but there's a lot of people giving him a lot of compliments. He's certainly saying he's very modest about it, Danielson. He's saying, I've not had the best year in Ring of Honor out of everyone here. He's putting Claudio Castagnoli over, saying that guy's had better matches than I've had. It does come across as quite modest, or he just genuinely loves Claudio Castagnoli, and I don't blame him.
I definitely don't think it's like contrived modesty or anything like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across that way anyway.
I don't actually think he was the only one he put over. He mentioned a few names, I think.
You're talking about a group called, were they called like the Black Wolves or something like that? I'd never heard of them before. Davey Richards was one of them whose name I think I'd heard of.
And I think he faces Davey Richards in the next show? So there's Boston faces Davey Richards, and then we head off to New York, which I think is the last show, going to be the last leg.
And is it at New York, backstage at New York, where we get quite a lot of, like, this is like your entourage moment. We get like, do you see Homicide there, right?
Yes.
Aye.
Yeah.
What did you think of Kevin Steen?
That messed me up. Like, I saw him, he looks 12 years old. It's so weird. And I was trying to think, he's 15 years ago. I was thinking, remember when we saw the picture of Kevin Steen with his boy? And his boy is massive. He's absolutely enormous. And I was thinking, this boy's probably only just like 2 or something like that.
Steen's like 39 or something like that. So
yeah, he looks so young. Danielson's going to be facing Nigel McGuinness, who is another very well thought of indie wrestler. I think for a period of time they were kind of considered the two best on the circuit. So I believe Nigel McGuinness here is going to TNA after this show.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a farewell for both of them. And there's quite a sort of you hear it quite a lot with the crowds at signings and outside when they're being asked about, the match and it being the end for the two of them, and you can tell they're a bit like, yeah, they deserve their chance, but
I hope they get used well. Is
Yeah.
a lot used a lot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's about 5 different people say that.
I think they must have quite an intense rivalry, McGuinness, like kayfabe rivalry. And I think Danielson even says something like, "We're not really each other's type of person, but in the ring, it works together, gels together really well." Like McGuinness commentates for AEW, and he's still like totally go off if Danielson's wrestling. I'd be like really negative about him.
Thanks. I like continuing that anyway. But yeah, I remember. Do you remember there was a magazine called Power Slam magazine?
Aye.
So I used to get that quite frequently.
So it was a good one.
Oh yeah, it was good. I used to, in that, hear things about people like Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. And I'd never seen these people, but they'd be being talked about like they were the best technical wrestlers around. I don't know why, but my mind immediately went back to Power Slam magazine when I realised these two were going to be having their match.
Nice, I like it. I feel like McGuinness doesn't look like his voice.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
He's like this, he is quite a big, thick kind of guy, and then he's got this really sort of geezerish voice.
Is he good on commentary?
Aye. He did NXT for a long time.
Yeah, he did do NXT for a bit, and I remember that being quite refreshing because it was clear that the NXT commentary was unscripted and they could just basically say what they saw.
Yeah, I know he is good. He is.
Nice. We get Brett has followed. He's also going to be there. He goes out and addresses the crowd again. I think that's the moment where he has his Colt Cabana handshake, actually. And from what you see, obviously they're not going to show you the full match, but it looks like they're putting on a bit of a clinic. Yeah. Danielson and McGuinness, and then we're getting the fans chanting, "We will miss you." Doesn't seem to be, your bitterness that you maybe associate sometimes with guys leaving. I think there's a genuine respect from the crowd for these guys. Cornette is going all in on his praise for Danielson, and Danielson seems to be taking that one in particular to heart.
Is he saying to him that's one of the best promos I've ever seen?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a thank you and farewell sort of promo he's cutting. Yeah,
and Cornette, he tends to hate an awful lot of what he sees in wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't imagine he's hated that much that Bryan Danielson's ever done, though. I can see him.
He gets quite annoyed when he's in the sort of hardcore street fight type stuff in AEW. He should know better. I've lost all respect for him.
So we're kind of heading towards the conclusion. This is, I think, a lot of what you were talking about before. He's speaking about going to WWE. He's very relaxed about it. Just said, he's going to go. He's going to give it a go. But if he has to come back and work on the indies, that's fine. As long as he's getting to wrestle. He seems far more concerned about, the medical stuff clearing that he can continue wrestling, even if WWE decide it's not going to work out here. I think he talks about being fired in 3 months or something like that, and then he was fired quite quickly.
He fired really quickly for attacking Justin Roberts, wasn't he?
Yeah, he choked him with a tie.
Yeah.
And I think the attack was all good, but I think the choking was considered don't do that. They brought him back fairly quickly. I think it was more of a let's be seen to have dealt with that.
It was interesting to hear him talk about if ever any injury should prevent me from being able to continue. I think he said something like, well, I'll just do something else or something like that. And of course, obviously, later on, that is exactly what he would have to do.
Yeah, he's one I always have this little bit of worry about. Like, has he reduced his schedule? He probably has, if compared to what he was working for a period of time in WWE anyway. But yeah, I think he always talked about having a retirement year in mind, and then it maybe passed. And then he's like, yeah, but now I'm thinking, that year and stuff like that. Because I imagine he could do a really good job helping train, guys on the technical side of wrestling and things like that. And yeah, just I agree with Cornette. Don't do silly things. Don't do straight. He didn't need to do it. It absolutely does not need to do it for the sake of his career. He can have a few technical wrestling matches and then walk away.
I think a lot of them are, and look what Edge just not that long ago did. I think they may probably going and doing stuff that they wouldn't have got the opportunity to do in the WWE machine.
Yeah.
And stuff that they've maybe enjoyed doing before.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe offers them the chance to do that. And I suppose, who are we to say didn't do that? We can just not watch it if we don't like it, sort of thing, you know what I mean?
Which, to be fair, I don't. But, it is just, what I don't want to hear is, Bryan Danielson severely injures himself with, just don't do that.
Didn't he break his... I think he broke his arm wrestling Okada. One of these, aye.
Yeah. Was that last year, maybe?
Was it?
Yeah. So, yeah, that basically takes us to our end of the show. I find it quite a tricky one to say whether I think people should go and watch it. I found it entertaining. I think maybe the way you did it was the better way to do it. Watch it in chunks. Yeah.
Aye. I suppose it's hard to tell. There's a Wrestling Road Diaries 2 and 3, which I understand are not quite as entertaining as the first one. I think Grado might be in the third one. You imagine Cabana and Grado. What poor soul had to go in a car with him.
Oh, wow.
But I would recommend it. I think maybe watch it. It's definitely no something, there's certainly no cliffhangers, or you're not going to stop it and be like, oh, I shouldn't have stopped it there, sort of thing. You can watch it in bits and pieces. But I found it, I think on reflection, I found it really, really entertaining. I could have watched more of it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I think the thing to consider for watching it is probably the fact that, and it's a good thing, I don't think there's much in there that's contrived. So you're not waiting for your big moment in it as such. It's more just a series of moments happening.
Aye.
It's the story around it is it's Daniel Bryan's farewell tour, Bryan Danielson's farewell tour, and it's Colt Cabana trying to adjust, I think, to being back in this environment, and the sort of the contrast, I think, of Cabana, I think, mentions a couple of times, I didn't have the best experience, but he deserves this, and he obviously doesn't want to indicate in any way it's not going to be a good experience for Danielson. But yeah, it's definitely entertaining. It has to lack that sort of storyline structure because of what it is.
Aye. Yeah. I think it must be pretty groundbreaking for the time that it was made, and for the way at which it was done and all that sort of stuff. And I think Cabana's brains behind it. Right. If not all of it, then a good portion of it. He seems to have been quite an innovator when it comes to various sort of different things like that. The podcast as well, he's got, although obviously it ended him up in court and falling out with his best mate, but he does seem to have been quite an innovator when it comes to a lot of different media stuff. So for that point of view, it's an impressive thing.
What's he up to these days?
I think he might be in Ring of Honor.
Oh, is he? Okay.
He was in AEW, obviously. I think he's in Ring of Honor.
Okay.
I honestly don't know how often Ring of Honor even goes anymore. I think Tony Khan bought it as a little pet.
Yeah. I know that, I think just before that they basically had a complete reset. And I was never sure what the intention was with it from Tony Khan's point of view.
I think coming away from both of these, I think something that you've mentioned, I'd be quite keen to try and find out if there is some sort of Bullet Club, something that sets out the history and
sort of telling the story of Bullet Club. Yeah.
And I think in future I'd be quite keen to do some sort of Ring of Honor journey of some description at some point in the future.
Yeah.
It's cool seeing younger wrestlers that you're now accustomed with seeing on flashy screens, but seeing them where they've started off and all that sort of stuff, or not even started off, because you place your Ring of Honor as like that middle step as opposed to anything else. So yeah, I think at some point in the future it'd be something I'd be interested in. Do you think you'd be the same?
Yeah. I kind of liked what I saw. It's obviously been so focused on the in-ring product. I think that's kind of been its thing over the years. Certainly, its peak years. But you hear about, some of the performers that have gone through there. Your CM Punks, your Samoa Joes. There's basically an endless list of guys that have gone through Ring of Honor, and seeing them. I'm always interested to see just how different some of them were as performers before they ended up kind of in the machine.
Yeah, same. What I think that I have realised, and it can't be the case with everyone, but it feels like you do all your work, you do all your hard work and your character building, and then you get to the big stage, like you do all your hard work to get to that big stage, and it gets picked up. And then you basically like play your greatest hits once you get there.
Yeah.
And for people that have followed your career, I suppose you're giving them a wink and a nod, aren't you? On the big stage. And for those that haven't, they're seeing it for the first time. I feel like as I get older and you see stuff like this, like what we've just watched, you kind of realise that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's definitely the case with Danielson. And I watched bits and pieces. I watched a wee thing after watching this. I watched a thing about the rivalry between Kevin Steen and El Generico in Ring of Honor.
Oh yeah.
And that was pretty cool. But again, like I think they had an NXT rivalry, and then they did a main roster one as well. And they're just basically recycling what they did, but for a bigger and wider audience.
Yes, but it's like obviously there was always said that Vince didn't watch any other wrestling, didn't watch any other company's product or anything like that. But the guys actually, writing it and putting matches together and things like that, they will. Your guys like, your Bruce Pritchards, they'll watch loads of other wrestling. There's no doubt in my mind about that, and they'll take things from it. Even here sometimes, like, they might take something and think, yeah, but we don't think it's quite right for that guy, so just give it to some other guy.
Else, yeah.
Which for me is when it starts to seem a bit brutal. But
yeah, absolutely. But two good ones. Like I said, I put links to both of them in the show notes, so if anybody listening wants to watch them, I think we'd both recommend them both.
Yeah, do you know one of the things I loved? What was it? 3 hours odd. There wasn't a single advert on YouTube.
Brilliant. There you go. Have you subscribed to like YouTube Premium by mistake and you don't know?
No, because there was a couple of adverts during Smack 'em Up.
Right, okay. Yeah. So I subscribed for like a month free to YouTube Premium, so I could download them and take them on holiday with me.
Nice.
So I got no adverts as well. So happy days. Nice. Okay. Two good ones again. I don't think I think I keep forgetting his name. Vampiro's probably been our worst one.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I think we've been all right with our docs.
Yeah.
I think it should be clear. Like we're not going to watch Wrestling with Shadows. We're not going to watch Beyond the Mat. Like we're not doing the obvious ones. We've watched them. God, as a young lad, I watched Beyond the Mat about 100 times. Could probably act it out for you. He's gonna puke it. But we're trying to broaden our horizons.
Yes.
So for next time there's a YouTube channel called Drop Mic Wrestling who do these really good documentaries. They do them all in a certain style, which is without any sort of narration, and they just let the action speak for itself, and they patch things together. So they've done CM Punk's run in AEW, so we're going to watch that, and we said we were going to watch the WWE produced, is it called My Name is Paul Heyman?
Yes.
But I'm now wondering if we try to find a Bullet Club one, and if there isn't a Bullet Club one, we fall back on the Paul Heyman.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Cool. Excellent. So if you are aware, if you're listening to this and you've managed to get an hour 14 into us talking about Colt Cabana eating watermelon, and you're aware of a Bullet Club documentary, please send us one, message us on Instagram, and let us know. That'd be wonderful.
Nice.
This weekend, Adam, I'll be going to Discovery Wrestling in Portobello. I'll be seeing Joe Hendry teaming up with the former Elias.
Nice.
They are tag teaming together in a match, so I will report back on that.
Nice. You were quite an Elias fan, weren't you, from what I remember?
More of an Ezekiel guy.
Oh, okay, fair. Yeah, that's fair.
That should be good fun. Take the kids. Yeah. It's crazy to think, I know I said this to you earlier, but you know, like the sort of publicity Joe Hendry's getting, it's crazy to think he's going to be wrestling in a town hall in Portobello on Sunday. After his face is popping up on an NXT pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. It might be a good time to make the most of getting to see him, because he's clearly making an impression.
Absolutely. Well, the kids met him the last time and got their photo with him and stuff like that. So
nice.
I'll do it this time. I'll report back on that if there's anything to report back on. But otherwise, we'll speak in a couple of weeks. We'll have European champions by then, won't we?
We will, yeah. Final will be Sunday.
Finals on Sunday, aye.
Yeah.
Who's your tip? What we got? Holland
v England and Spain v France. I'm going to stick with Spain.
Has
I think they've been the best team through it. Like, I kept thinking if England suddenly click and play well, because it made the semi-final, but it doesn't actually feel like they've played any real football yet. Mm-hmm. And does that mean they're just never gonna, or could summon spark? You know, they might have a chance to play football against the Dutch, because I think that'll be quite an open game. They're not going to sit back. They're going to put their men forward.
Yeah, I'd like to see them play like Turkey did and just, mm-hmm. get the ball and go for it.
Yeah,
can I see it though, based on how they've been playing?
And I don't think France are about to open up. They'll just try and play for a 0-0 against Spain, I would think.
Yeah, Spain have been good. Spain have been. It's a shame Spain and Germany have ended up in the same side, and
felt like it could have been a final.
Aye, that was good. That was so we were getting picked up for the airport, like bang on 90 minutes at that game, and me and my oldest were sat watching it, and we were saying, we just want to know if there's a final result. Like, I didn't want them to score, because Germany were pushing, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But never mind. Cool. Okie dokie. 2 weeks' time. Are you going to survive watching like 2.5 hours of Punk? Are you going to be all right with that? Because I'm going to be like a pig in shit rolling about.
I'll be okay. I'll be like, we're quite opposites on the Punk spectrum. But it's not that I don't appreciate his in-ring quality of match, and actually some of the promos as well. I just think he's a bit of a dick.
Mm-hmm. I think this will cover.
Would admit that he's a bit of a dick.
Do you think he would though?
Maybe it depends who he was talking to.
Not Ariel Helwani. I think he was very self-complimentary in that interview.
Yeah.
I think this will cover everything, inside and out.
Yeah.
Inside and out the side of the ring. Not.
Yes.
Indeed. Okay. Right. Let's do that then. Send us a Bullet Club documentary. We want to learn. We shall speak in 2 weeks, Adam. Take it easy.
Cheers.